unmute yourself or put them in the chat. At any time, we can do that. We can take questions afterwards, whatever you'd like. So for those of you that don't know, my name's Henry Lowry. I'm the vendor analyst. I'm the one who sent you the invite to get here. So welcome everybody. So today we have Rowing, who's our IT solutions team. Brad is going to be presenting. So I'm going to hand it over to Brad. And then, like I said, if you guys have questions, let's have them. But thanks for everybody for being here. Brad?
All right, welcome everybody. All right, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and we will get started. So, subject of today is talking about the vendor portal for utility vendors for state of Indiana. And we introduced this a couple years ago. We've done some enhancements here. Well, I guess last fall, since it's now 2024. And these changes came out in 2023. So today we just wanted to kind of do an overview over what the vendor portal is, what it can do for you, and then we'll also, in doing so, cover what those changes are and those new enhancements and ways you can utilize some of that stuff. So what is the vendor portal? So the idea behind the vendor portal is to give utility companies working with Indiana and the local service providers more access to look stuff up yourselves, pull down transmittals, look up your customers that would have applied for energy assistance, to be able to find out some of that information without having to contact the LSPs as much. Obviously, you don't want to wait on the phone when you're trying to get a hold of them, and it's hard for them to, be able to answer in a timely manner when they're processing applications. So the idea is just to give you access to some of that data in real time so that if you have a question and you can answer it through the vendor portal, then that saves everybody the effort of trying to, contact someone, look it up and do it when everybody's in a busy time of year anyway for doing that stuff. So that's the concept behind the vendor portal. Any of the vendors that are interested in using it, Henry's the go-to guy to help you find out more information about it, get signed up, and utilize the vendor portal. And that's what I'm going to kind of walk through today and show you how it works. So this is the main screen. The login page, we use what are Microsoft accounts. So if your organization is already using Microsoft 365, used to be called Office 365, the same user ID you use to log in, to Windows and things like that in your computer and your organization is what you would use to log into here. So that makes things a lot easier on our side for doing that. And it makes it where your IT security policies get applied as well. So all of the accounts, we don't ever actually store your password. We just know who you are, and we authenticate you back against your own Active Directory to make sure you're valid before we give you access to the portal. So it's what you would see, on a lot of websites today when they say, hey, do you want to sign in with Microsoft, Google, Facebook, all those different types of sign-ins? We're doing the exact same type of thing here. We're just doing it against the Microsoft accounts since most corporate accounts are that. So once you get logged in, we're on our test site today. So I'll just give you a little heads up that all the data you see in here is fake. Some of it doesn't even look very real, and that's for a reason, because it is our test site. And when we go through and put data in, we are intentionally trying to break things. So you may see some pieces of data in here that you look at and go, that doesn't look right. Well, it's probably one of those records that we entered in to intentionally try to break something. So don't let that bother you. Most of the data should look pretty reasonable as far as what you're seeing. None of it's real, so we don't have to worry about anything there with any compromise to clients and information. Once you have access to first user, and we'll kind of show you this later on, you can add more users from your organization. So it's not limited to just a single person. So we'll kind of cover that at the end of the session. We're just going to go down the menu, and that happens to be at the bottom. So, but once you get logged in, we are acting under an organization called Testing Energy Utility, highly specialized name. But this is our organization for today that we'll be working under, and my name in the corner. I'm not really Scarlett O'Hara, but Gone with the Wind, that was our characters for when we put some of these in. So there you go. I'm operating as Scarlett today. Once you are in the system, though, you can go, there is a help menu. And what that does is open up our knowledge portal. So once you're in, you can get into here and navigate through this screen to basically the same navigation that's in the application. And you can click on any of these documents, and documents will go through and give you information about what that particular screen does, how it works, why you would use it, that type of stuff, all described in there. So that all is available to all users by just hovering over your name and clicking on the help link there in the corner. So with that said, let's go ahead and dive in. So the main screen when you get here is focused around the transmittals list. So obviously that's key for you as a utility company to get those transmittals from the LSPs containing, the customers that are being served under energy assistance, so that you can identify them, handle moratorium, know that you're going to get paid, all that type of information. So prior to the vendor portal, you may have been getting some of those in different ways from the LSPs. Sorry. You could get them by mail. You may get them by email. You could get them by FTP site. There's just a whole host of ways that those get sent over. With the introduction of the vendor portal, you can also receive them through the vendor portal itself and get those same files that you would be receiving yourself. So if you opt into using this, there's a setting which we'll hit when we get to the vendor information screen that says you're going to opt in to receive them that way. It doesn't mean that's the only way you have to receive them. The LSPs, when they're generating the transmittals, can click a button to just send that transmittal over to the vendor portal for you, and you can get notifications when those arrive. So it's a more secure way to do it than email. Unless you're doing encrypted email, there's potentially identifying information in these files, so we've always got to be careful with that type of thing. So within here, you can directly see those. So when you are on this main screen with the transmittals, you basically, the first thing you get is this view of transmittals that are in process. So the definition of in-process transmittals are ones where the LSP has sent them over to you for review. So the process, as you're probably all familiar with, the LSP sends it over, you check for errors, identify ones that might have the wrong account number, the wrong name, or maybe they're not even your customer for some reason. Maybe they've moved, something happened. And then you send that information back to the LSPs. If there are any corrections, they make the correction, then they send it on to physical for IHCDA for payment, and then it comes gets paid directly to you. So that's what this in process shows, those transmittals that have been sent to you and you have not returned to the LSP yet. So if you opt in to use the electronic transmittals in the vendor portal, you definitely want to go ahead and actually send them back through here as well, because otherwise they are going to stack up. If you just opt in to see them and grab the files, but you don't send them back that way, eventually you're going to get a long list in here because it's just going to keep building up. But the way they come off the list, if we go choose a particular transmittal, and let's see, I had one in here that I was going to look at. I suppose it doesn't matter which one at this point. So 129. There we go. So if I pull this one up, I can just click the icon on it, and I'm on my test server. So hopefully it's hasn't gone to sleep on me. So on the screen, we get the transmittal number, the date it was generated, which LSP is sending it over to you, their batch number, the total number of claims, and then if there's a physical, there won't be a physical date or paid date at this point because these are the in progress. But as it moves through the system with you and the LSPs and IHCDA, these dates get filled in and you can come back and see them. So this transmittal, I've got a list of the claims that are included. So show just a basic grid showing you, account number, billing name, address, the amount, the type of claims, what the payment source is coming, whether it's a regular, crisis, or something else, and whether or not you've indicated there's a correction. At the bottom, you can go ahead and generate the same exact PDF files that the LSP would be sending you. So if you've been receiving those as PDF via email or, snail mail or FTP or some other source, Dropbox, something like that, you can generate them yourself just by clicking the PDF button, and it will generate those PDFs for this particular one. You can also generate the EDI files that you may also be receiving if you're processing those automatically through your system. So you can pull those down anytime you want. And then there is an additional option to generate the transmittal data in an Excel format. So that was added for any utility companies that don't currently handle the EDI file. The Excel file might be something you can process, or at least give you an easier way to work with the data. So just like you're currently receiving the transmittals in some form, you can generate those files yourself directly within the system. So if you've received this one, you're going to work through it, and you decide that there is something wrong. For instance, with Judy Jetson's record here, you can click on that record, see additional information that would be what's in the printed transmittal as well. So we still have all the information about the transmittal, but now we have the full account number, the billing name, street address, all those things that you would see on that PDF form for a record around the person. And if for some reason you say, this account number is just wrong, then I'm going to go ahead and indicate I need to make a correction. Account number should be this with a 2 on the end, for example. So I can make that. You could put a note in here says this is not a current customer. They've moved, their account's been closed, whatever things you would typically be sending back. You can include that information here within the correction note. And if I save that and go back, now you can see I've got an indicator that tells me there's actually been a correction made to that record. So you can process all those here through the UI to pass that information back along to the LSP. So when you finish that, you've got everything where it's good, or hopefully there's no corrections at all. Everything's going well. Clients are giving the right information. Intake staff has put it in, and it's getting to you, and no changes need to be made, which would be awesome. You can add a note to this particular transmittal if you want to, if there's some kind of comment. But essentially what you're going to do is you're going to return this transmittal to the agency. And doing that just pops up a notice that, hey, this is the equivalent of sending that signed transmittal sheet back. If you go to accept, it's going to disappear from my list. I'm not going to do that because then this one disappears from my list. And then I lose my nice sample data for you. There's questions later, but I'll show you ones that have been clicked there. So you click that, this transmittal just basically changes status is all it does. Doesn't do anything, nothing happens to it, but it would move to the returned list. So the returned list is very similar. The additional columns here are the physical date and paid date as it starts moving through that process, which this is new information that you haven't had really available to you in the past. But the process being the agency then is going to make any of those corrections, and they're going to submit it to fiscal, which sends it up to IHCDA, so their accounting staff then can go ahead and process it for payment. So this gives you those additional pieces of information that you don't currently have available to you to look at. So if I open this particular one here, the same type of thing. I've still got all the same functionality, except I'm not going to be returned to the agency anymore. You wouldn't be making corrections anymore because it's already being processed by the LSP, but you can still pull the files back down if there's a need. So if something happened and you needed the files brought down again, you can do that. If the agency made a correction to these claims that are on this transmittal, these files will reflect that. So if I had sent this back and this account number had been incorrect for Joe Shoemaker, the LSP made that correction and you're going to see that corrected account number here. This is all real time. We're not working in disparate systems here. Whatever changes the LSP makes or you notate are real time. It's all active. So if there's a client that is removed from the transmittal, when you come back into this returned list, you'll see they're not on that transmittal anymore, and the number of claims and the dollars would have changed to reflect that. So at this point, there's nothing for you to do except you basically can watch the process, which you haven't had the capability to do before. So we've got our physical date, so we know it was generated on this date, got sent to HCDA for payment on this date. Transmittals that don't go to HCDA for payment, things where the LSP pays you directly, will still have a physical date, but that's the date they're handling it internally. So that it's the same date whether HCDA processes the payment or whether it's something that's the LSP handles directly. So same process, you won't really know any difference as far as what's happening. So you can watch those, and then the third view are paid transmittals. So once they go from in process to returned, the LSP processes it. If they either handle it internally for payment or they send it to HCDA, once that transmittal gets marked as paid, then it will show up in this list and they'll stay in here for 60 days. So you'll be able to see any transmittals. It's the same view. You just end up with, now you've got a paid date, same type of information that you saw before, but it will be sitting here in this paid and it'll stay there, like I said, for 60 days. That way, if you do want to go, try to keep an eye on which ones you should be expecting to see show up in your accounts. It's very easy to do. We drop them off after 60 days just because throughout the year, you get a lot of transmittals, the majority of you do. So we don't want to just give you, hundreds of them sitting out there over a year, over a course of a few years, just kind of builds things up. So the capability to view them for the last 60 days lets you kind of look at what's going on and make sure everything matched and whether there were any changes. So there is the indicator if corrections were made, when you send it back. When you're in any of these views, you do have searching capabilities. So many of you probably work with multiple LSPs, so you can always go through here and type in the name of the agency and just filter down to their transmittals. You can search on the transmittal date. So if you know that the agency LSP created that transmittal on a particular date to be sent, you can pull up just the ones for a date. And of course, you can always search by the transmittal number, which is this first column. So if you are getting them in more than one format, or if your system captures that information as well, you can always go back and look those up through this search capability as well. So that's been in place for quite a while as far as the ability to handle the transmittals and pull them down electronically. And if any of you aren't using it, I think there's great value in reaching out to Henry and getting logged into the system so you can pull that information down yourself and look at it. Like I said, there's definitely the value in seeing the information through here. It can definitely save you some time sending that information back to the LSPs. And of course, you've never had access to where those transmittals are in the process. And now you can see a little more detail about what's happening with it and when it's been paid. So that's transmittals. And like I said, if you have questions about that, information about that's in the help. So you can always go back and look at the documentation and see how that works. So moving on, we get to clients. So introduced part of this functionality last year. We've enhanced it this year to give you more information. The idea here is to allow you to go ahead and directly look up when a client tells you that they've applied for energy assistance, to be able to come in and see if they actually have applied, what their status is, whether they actually named you as their utility company, because if they didn't, they're not going to show up in your list. And then you can even see where that application is within the process for the LSPs. So on this screen, we have some different information, and you'll see the application number. There's two different formats here. When you see this long format number, that's one that's actually been processed from by the LSP. They have done something with it. They're working that application. The smaller numbered list, those are always going to have typically an applied status. Those are coming in through our client portal. So this is the scenario where the client has gone out to the website and they've gone through the application electronically and filled it out. And then once they do that and they upload their documentation, either themselves or with the assistance of Indiana 211, that gets submitted to the LSP for the county that they reside in, and it will sit there in their intake queue. And ideally, it'll sit there only for a few days, but at the start of the season, obviously, as people are applying, it's just like paper applications. When they come in the door, it's a big stack, and it's going to take the LSP, some time to process those. They do process out of the intake queue for the online applications in a first in, first out. So they're always going to work through that process in a timely, in order as they go through that. But all of those with that number will always have this applied status. If a client starts an application but never submits it, you won't see them in here because they haven't officially applied for energy assistance. So that means until they finish that process or apply in some other form, via paper or via an appointment with the LSP, they do not have an actual application at that time, so they would not show up in this list. So you can see any of these applied has not been taken by the LSP to be worked. You can see whether the client indicated they're in crisis. And then as we go down through the list, you'll see applications that are in different statuses. So here's one. No one put in a billing name, but I've actually got a denied application, so you can see those. So here's a barely here person that in this case, the application was processed by the agency. You can click on it. You can see that here's the account number. This is when they applied. The agency completed work in the application. They were not marked as in crisis. They don't have any claims, but they were a denied application. So that's information that was not previously available, and all this information wasn't available really to you as well, unless you kind of reach out to the agency directly. So the things you can do in here, if I go into a particular person, I can go search for an application number. So the LSP, when the system generates a number for this that's unique for each client. So if a client provides that information to you, you can look it up by that client number. You can also look it up based on their intake number. So when they finish their application in the client portal, they're told what their intake number is, so they actually have that information. They can give it to you as well. You can also search based on the name, the account number, which is probably a good way from your perspective. Assuming it got entered incorrectly, or you can search by the application date. So you can put in the month, day, year, and it will actually search this application date field and filter those down as well. So the idea is, as the client has applied, if then they come to you and say, hey, we're covered by moratorium, or you want to come in and just see what's happening with that application, if there's a question about it, you can come in and you can find Angela in this case. You can see the information about the date she applied. She's not currently told us that she's in crisis, but claims have been created on a transmittal. So this would allow you to know that there is a transmittal that's been generated with Angela's claims on it. She's currently in approved status for energy assistance. So if they're going to have claims, they will be approved. You may see some statuses such as incomplete, or denied, or on appeal that might show up in here that would indicate different situations that are happening with between the client and the LSP, trying to work through questions that they have on eligibility for those situations. But this would let you know that there actually is a claim, one or more claims for this individual sitting out there in a transmittal. It may be one you've already received. It may be one that's coming to you currently, but you haven't seen yet. So all of that information is available for the clients in your list for that program year. So we'll talk about here in a minute. I'll show you where you set this up, but you do have the option to get notified when things appear in this list. So when applications are getting processed, if your organization has new applications, then you have the option to receive an email, a daily email telling you that there are new applications. For the large utilities, that's probably not as helpful because pretty much every day you're going to get some. But if you're one of the smaller utilities where you don't have as many claims coming to you, that could be a nice option for you just to receive that email. The email just contains a link that brings you directly to this page and includes the date in the search criteria. So if I got an email today, it would have linked me into yesterday's applications. So I would have received the email if my test utility company here had new applications yesterday, and I could simply click the link, put in my credentials to sign in, and I would get this screen with the filter already in place for yesterday's applications. So just a quick way so you can kind of have better detail about what's happening with the LSPs and your customers, so that more information is definitely better in all these situations. So that covers a lot of what we can do within the screen. You'll notice some of these don't have billing names. That's due to the way applications come in through the vendor portal, but when you search, it actually searches the household members on those situations. So even if a client is in this applied status, you can still find them by name with this search name, even though the billing name appears blank, because we will look at the household members in that situation. All right, so moving along. Vendor information. This is basically your configuration screen. There are some security rules I'll mention here as we get to the end that control who can get into various pieces. There are view and edit permissions around transmittals and clients, but you have to be an administrator user to get into these last three menu items. So the vendor information screen basically tells what we're calling your utility company. And who your current contact name is. You shouldn't change your vendor name. But if you do need to change your primary contact, that's fine. Shows what address is on record with IHCDA. And then these three sets of notifications are things you can choose to enable if you wish. They're not required. If they're not helpful to you, don't turn them on. If you want to try them, go for it. And then, continue to use them or not based on whatever you need. It does not impact being able to use the vendor portal and the things we've already shown you. It literally is just going to send you emails, which we all need more of, but sometimes that's a very beneficial thing to just get that email notification that something has happened in here, especially things around crisis and that type of information. So this one is a handy one that I would recommend. New transmittals. So when the LSP generates a transmittal, like I said, they can click a button and send it over to the portal to you. You won't by default see transmittals in there unless the agency's sending them to you electronically. So this then allows whomever you put in this box, it can be a particular mailbox. If you've got shared mailboxes, that's kind of a nice place. If you got more than one person that handles transmittals, feel free to do that. But this will enable that notification. It's a daily notification. So you'll get that email telling you that there are new transmittals, and you can come in and search on that transmittal date to pull those up and see the list of new transmittals in your list. So ideally your transmittal list, the in-process ones, aren't going to accumulate. It's the ones you're working and trying to turn around so that you can get paid quicker. Crisis notifications are the next type of email you can receive. So if you enable that, in this case, you may want multiple email addresses. So we've got a slightly different format for this one because there's the potential of adding more. These do not have to be users of the system. They can be anyone you want to get that. But if they're not a user, then they're not going to be able to get into the system and look up the details because the email does not contain the information for the client. It just contains the information, a link to the record in here. So if you put someone in here and they're not a user of the system, it's really not going to do anything other than just let them know that something happened, but they won't know anything about what actually happened. We do that sending the link because that's more secure. All the data is contained in the system. We don't have to worry about sending encrypted emails or anything like that, which is good to have, but it's kind of a hassle for most people. So this will let you know if there is a crisis application either coming through intake or being processed by the agency that's a new crisis, new application or intake with crisis indicated. And then the last one is probably more useful for smaller utilities that don't receive as much data, because this is basically going to send you a daily email letting you know that there are new applications for the prior day where your utility company was indicated. If you're one of the big vendors and you're getting lots of these coming in from the agency, that's probably not that helpful to get this email, but you can still get it. It's the same as the others. It basically has a link to that application or the client page with the filter of the date. So you can do the same thing just by going to that screen, typing the date in. But if you receive the email, it's as easy as clicking the link, put in your credentials to sign in. You come directly to the screen. It's already filtered to that date and that information is available. The participate in the program. This is how you indicate that you want to receive transmittals electronically in the vendor portal. As I mentioned, you don't have to, although I think that's probably one of the biggest benefits. I mean, between the transmittals and the clients, that's the whole idea, is to get you more information about those transmittals. If you mark this as yes, then the LSP has the ability to click that button and send the transmittals to you through the portal. I think there's great value in that because then that lets you see those as they happen. They're just immediately there. It also gives you the ability to pull the files down yourself. So if you have a problem receiving the file, it's just there. You just click the PDF, the EDI, or the Excel version. And you have the additional ability as it gets processed by the LSP and IHCDA to see when it was sent to physical, when it's paid, gives you insight into that information and that whole process of payment, which is a benefit to everybody, and hopefully reduces the need for you to reach out to the LSPs and get that information from them. Gives you that self-service capability to look that information up. And the last section are the list of counties served. So this is used when we're completing applications to know which counties your utility is serving so that we're not getting information in the system incorrectly. So, if we've got a utility that's in the north and the south of the state that have very similar names, we don't want intake staff to accidentally use the wrong one. So we look at this county list to limit that for the intake staff, try to simplify things, try to reduce the chance of that happening. So it's a good thing really for you to just glance at it the first of the year. It's not likely to change unless your organization is growing, taking on new service areas or something like that. But the list should contain any county where you have a customer. And if there is one missing, you can either reach out to IHCDA, they can assist, or you can actually add counties yourself if you're an administrator. Once again, this is a screen that requires the administrator role within the vendor portal.
Hey, Brad, I just want to add that. Yeah, I just want to add that we do most of that on the back end, so there really shouldn't be too much of that from the vendor side, but you can always let us know if there's an issue.
Yep.
So.
And I would recommend that if you do come in here and you see something that you question, just have a question about, reach out to the staff at IHCDA on that first. Let them review it with you, make sure that everybody's on the same page. So definitely a good idea, but at least you can look at it and you can understand what's going on. But it's kind of the same rule I tell everybody in every piece of software we have. If you don't know what it does, don't click it, just look at it and call somebody. Reach out, ask the question. That way, nothing changes unexpectedly on anybody's part. So IHCDA's, the goal here is really just to give you more information and make sure it's available. Try to make it where you can do more things for yourself. This one doesn't have anything set up, but once again, you can see what the banking information is in relation to how IHCDA makes their payments. So Again, not something you should change, but something you may want to look at. You have to be an administrator to see this information once again within the vendor portal. This is basically trying to give you information to ensure that IHCA has the right information. If you ever have had that question, where are payments going, which accounts are they ending up in, you can see that information from the screen. If there is a need to make any changes, definitely reach out to IHCA on this. That is not something that you want to take lightly as far as where that information moves. And like I said, you have to be an administrator within the vendor portal to even access this screen. And lastly are the list of users. So within the system, if I look at my current user here, I'm Scarlett today. My name, I've got my email. I'm currently an active user. So if you do have, if you've added particular staff to this system, and then at some point they change roles, they no longer need access, they're no longer with your organization, you can simply inactivate their account and they no longer get into the system. If you're using corporate accounts, then when your IT department disables their account and they can't log into their email and all that other stuff, they will no longer have access to this system either, because we're basing it off of your organization's directory of users. So that's one of the big advantages to doing it this way. It's essentially gives that extra layer of control for your IT. Your offboarding process ends up with the user disabled inside your Active Directory. And by doing so, you're no longer able to log into the system either. So just that extra layer of security when we're doing that. So I'm currently a member of the administrator group. If I go back to my user management and I pick someone else, let's pick Duchess Daisy and see what she is. So she's in the processor group. So the processor group, and these are all listed within the documentation and the help file, but the processor group is able to go through transmittals, make corrections, and send them back. If I look at groups, we basically just have 3. So we've got the administrator, which can do anything in the vendor portal that's allowed. The processor, which means they can come in, they can make corrections to a transmittal, generate the files, return the transmittal back to the LSP, and of course, look up client information and all that. And then the viewer security role has the ability to go in and look at transmittals, pull the files, but they cannot return those transmittals to the LSP. They can also go in and look at client information. Neither the processor or the viewer security roles have access, though, to the vendor information, banking account, or user management. They only have access to the first 2 areas of the system. When you add a new user, you basically fill in their name, email address, add them to a group and save, and then you can send an invitation. So what the system does is it will use this email address, send out an email with a link in it for that user of their email to just click on, which then associates their account with your Active Directory. So it basically tells us that you are for real. It makes you sign in through a Microsoft sign-in. And then we're linked over to yours. We don't have any access to the data in your Active Directory other than the fact that we know your name and your email address and are you a valid user. We can't go in and see any other information about your users. If for some reason that fails, you can always reset the account, which just clears the authentication information and send the invitation again. So that gives you the ability to set up your own users and do that literally by just clicking add new user, add new vendor user to the system. If you do inactivate users, we do filter those out of the list, and you can go see ones that have been disabled and do not currently have access. So, but once you have your if you need a first account, contact Henry. Reach out. IHCA can get you set up in here with that first user. The first user becomes that administrator. And then from that perspective, that person can go add your additional staff members that you want to have access. There's not a limit to how many users you have in here. Obviously, I don't recommend making very many people administrator. 2 is usually the recommendation, the primary person and a backup. But other than that, most of your staff will probably be viewers with a couple processors. Let people come in, view the transmittals, view the client information. That's all well and good. Limit your people with the processor role to the ones that are just handling the transmittal itself. They're going to make the corrections. They're going to send it back. The same staff that are doing that for you today. And that will essentially, the lowest level of security you can give someone is that view permission, and start everybody there. If they need something else, you can always add it. So with that said, I think I have covered the majority of what's in the system today. What's been added, it is something that's ongoing. Every year we add more functionality to it, give you more data to view. And like I said, that's the goal with IHCDA and us working together on this, to try to put more information in your hands, let you have more visibility into what's happening with your customers as they're receiving energy assistance benefits, and just try to make that process easier for you and for the LSPs, to make it more self-service on your side. This is available, it's up 24/7. So if for some reason, you're going to be working after hours, you can still look up this data. It's all real time. So it's not delayed. You're not seeing data from yesterday or something like that. If you happen to be in here looking at a record and the vendor or the LSP makes the correction that you asked for, you're going to see it as soon as your screen refreshes. It's all happening against the same data. So, but that's our goal. Just give you more capabilities and make everybody's lives easier. So with that, I will pass it back to Henry with just one comment that it's always a work in progress. We're always trying to improve things. If you do have thoughts and things that you think would be handy to see in the future, those ideas are welcome. Can't guarantee they'll be done. They all get put into an order, and we try to prioritize what makes the most sense for the most users and eliminates the most headaches for everybody. So, but ideas are always a good thing for us to have. So, Henry, with that, I will pass it back to you and see if we get any questions.
Thanks, Brad. Well said. Yeah, so we've got a couple questions in the chat. And so I'll kind of read them off. Everybody should be able to unmute themselves. Just, I would ask that we use the raise hand function, and then we'll call on you if you want to chime in out loud, or just type it in the chat, either way. So, so our first question is, how do we know if we have an account already to access this website? That is possible. It could have happened at some point. I would just suggest that if you're having any login issues at all, just email us at vendors@ihcda.in.gov. I put it in the chat, and then I'll help you get it straightened out. So whichever way. Second question is, are LSPs required to use the portal? We have one LSP who does not participate in the portal, so I was just curious. Tom, would you like to speak on this for a second?
We're going to make Tom speak.
I'm going to make him speak at least once.
Absolutely.
That's fair. That's fair. Hello, everyone. Yeah, so, I mean, the portal is a tool to use these to get this whole process done, right? And our expectation, I would say, is that our vendor partners and our subgrantee partners are able to work together to find a mutually beneficial way of efficiently getting these done. So what I will say on this is, if you are all in on using the portal and you are getting pushback from any of the subgrantee partners, please let us know. We definitely don't want to kind of put people on blast here in this training, right? So just email us, let us know, and we will work to kind of bridge that gap and find a middle ground that is beneficial for everyone.
Yep. So that second question after that is actually, how do we get all of our agencies to send us transmittals in the portal? I think that answers the same thing. Is if you're getting pushback, if they're not doing all of them, have a conversation, right? Communication is going to be key. Building that relationship with those managers is really, really key. And then loop us in, and then so we can have a conversation as well. So, and then we'll see what we can get done. Next question. When requesting a correction, how is the LSP notified that a correction is needed? I believe that's in when you're returning the transmittal, I think is, yeah.
Yep. So when we look at, and I can go through here to one of the returns, here's a return that has a correction in it. So the LSPs, when they get these back, they actually get a notification. They have a similar view to this list of transmittals that come back, and it indicates that there is a correction. And then they have almost the same type of screen where they can see what those corrections are. So they can go in and they can see your notes directly. So within doing that, then they also have the ability to click directly on that application, which opens in another tab for them, so they can have your correction on one tab of the screen, flip over to the application just at a click and make that correction as well. So from their perspective, that's a real time saver for them. They don't have to sit there and type in the person name, search for them, click on it, go open it, go to the claims tab, edit, do all that. They can just click directly over to it. So it is a big benefit for them, but they get the same type of information you do as far that you provide them, and kind of the same way you see it as far as this transmittal has a correction, and then which ones are the individual corrections. Like I said, they can literally, when they click this, click right over into that application directly, and it is a time saver for them as well.
There was actually a follow-up question to that is, do they receive an email notification when a correction has been requested?
There is notifications in the system. I don't remember that they get an email or not. I'd have to go look at that, but we have alerts and things like that. They have a specific view in the system that just shows them transmittals that have been returned electronically to them. And their goal is to keep that list empty.
Yep, great. And then somebody said, it looks like we're missing some counties in that list. They saw Allen County, but not Adams.
They should, the list I showed was just our testing agency, the utility company. So I didn't have all 92 counties added to that particular organization. But they should all be in the list if you're going in and look at your own, and there's the need to add some. But like I said, if you do feel like there's a county missing, I'd reach out to IHCDA first.
Yeah.
Just touch base with them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great questions. Do we have any other questions? Okay. Well, I just kind of wanted to quickly say, thanks, Brad. Great presentation. Appreciate all the hard work you guys are doing. This is definitely looking like a benefit for the users, and so we're continuously trying to make it better. So we thank everybody today for attending and for wanting to add, efficiency to your processes. So I did put our email in the chat. And so if you have any further questions, if you have any issues, want to get onboarded, whatever it might be, let me know, or just any follow-up questions at all. So go ahead and do that. And, I do want to take a second and just thank everybody for everything you've done this season, right? I mean, this is a holiday season. It's very difficult for everybody, especially for our most vulnerable Hoosiers. And so you guys are doing a great job of protecting those people and getting them the assistance they need. So thank you so much. Let us know if you have any other questions, and otherwise have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Hey,
Tom?
Henry.
Yeah.
There actually is another question that went into the chat.
Oh.
It doesn't necessarily pertain specifically to the portal, but I think it is kind of corollary to
Sure.
one of the reasons that we asked Rowing to help us develop this. So I would just like to speak to it. So
please.
There's a question in the chat of at what point is a customer covered under moratorium? And like I said, so that's not exactly a portal specific question, but since part of the reason that we wanted this portal was to kind of ease some of the burden around moratorium, I thought I'd speak to it. So the moratorium requirements state that so full protection is afforded when an applicant household has applied for the benefit program and has been deemed eligible. However, there is a clause in there that states that that household shall be protected while eligibility is being determined. So the IURC has interpreted that to mean that basically kind of provisional protection should be extended the moment an application has been submitted, while the agency is determining that eligibility. And so that's why we really wanted this to be able to have this feature where you would be able to go in and see what applications are kind of in the pipeline that might not have had the eligibility determined yet, so that you could know if any of your customers have actually submitted those applications, and you can be in contact with those LSPs, to see how far off are you from determining that eligibility, but also know that, so that you are able to not, inadvertently turn them off when they should be receiving that protection, whether it's provisional or full.
Great.
Um,
And we got some more questions.
yeah.
Great. So the next question is, are the LSPs receiving the same training? So they received a little training last week, I believe. Wasn't that last week?
Yep.
About the vendor portal, or about the portal itself. So yes, they are receiving a lot of training on this as well. And then if we are currently receiving transmittals by email and returning them the same way promptly, do we necessarily have to use the portal? And the answer is no, you don't have to use this portal. If you have a process that works for you and that is the end all, that is fine. This is, there are great benefits to using this, but we are currently not forcing anybody to use it. And, if you want to talk about it more, you can always give us a call or shoot us an email. So. And lastly, how do you send money back to IHCDA through the portal? You cannot do that. So there is no money coming backwards to us through the portal. There needs to be forms filled out to do that. If you have questions about that, please shoot me an email. I can get you that process very quickly, and we can talk about that. So, but yeah, not through the portal. And is moratorium protection only if they apply, if they choose not to apply? Yes, the protection only exists if they apply. Yeah. Yes. Great questions. Okay. Everybody's very welcome. Thanks for these questions. And thank you all for your time. Are they protected if they apply but are denied? So yes. So the client is protected while they are being, while the eligibility is being determined. So remember, an LSP has 55 days to determine eligibility. And so they would be, if it, like, let's say they took that entire time period, they would be protected during that time. If they were then denied, then the protection does not continue. So, and yep, the next question is about propane companies, and the moratorium does not pertain to bulk or propane companies. Yep. Yeah. Okay, slow down here. Again, you guys can always email me. Inbox is always open. So thank you everybody for attending today. Hope everybody has a great afternoon. So thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.